Well, hello everybody. I'm Hal,
And I'm Melanie.
and we want to welcome you to another episode of Making Biblical Family Life Practical here in our coronavirus lockdown.
Everybody talks about being bored, and we are literally running ourselves ragged. You know, all these conferences that we go to in the spring, many of them have tried to pivot and go to online conferences, and 4 of them, count it 4, decided to do it this week.
Yeah,
Yes.
we had to, I think we had to gather and send out like 13, 17 workshops or
Yeah,
something. I mean,
wow.
we were recording and recording and recording, and wow, but you know, it's everybody is on the alert, and there's a lot of folks looking for help,
Oh,
and
I'm so glad to do it. I'm so
we
glad to
are
do it.
not complaining,
But
just
we're a little tired, a little overwhelmed. So tonight we're going to talk about something fun.
because we know that some of you are working harder than you ever had, and some of you are sitting around saying, now what? Because you don't have a lot of extra stuff going on.
And even if you're working yourself to death, you may need to read something interesting before you go to sleep at night. That's what I do. I have
Well,
insomnia and I cannot go to sleep unless I read at night.
and so we thought this might be a good time because I've seen people out on social media saying, tell me what to watch next. I binge watched everything on Netflix. Well, let's talk about books. We're book people. And so what all right, let me ask you this question.
Okay.
Totally unprompted, unprepared. What are you reading right now?
I am actually reading a science fiction series
Hmm.
by David Weber
Okay.
and um and really enjoying it. Yeah, I don't agree with all of it. He doesn't handle it like I would, some things, but
Hmm.
I'm enjoying it a lot. It's the Honor Harrington series.
Okay. And
You can't just hand it to your kids, okay? But it's a good read for grown-ups.
okay.
The reason I say that is he deals with some religious issues, and
Yeah.
actually in a pretty fair way.
Uh-huh.
Um, at least he doesn't discount religion, but still,
Yeah.
I think it's confusing to kids.
Okay. All right. I'm
Uh-huh.
reading, you know what I'm reading?
What?
I'm reading a biography of Calvin Coolidge. Whoa, doesn't that sound
That
exciting?
sounds so boring.
Okay. We're
That
gonna
sounds like a crashing bore.
oh no, it's quite good. But we're gonna talk a little bit about our different tastes in books after the break. But I thought we'd just kick off with some of the things that we both have discovered we liked, and especially series, because this is a binging season and people want to know, can I read 5 or 10 books by this person? Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
isn't it amazing to discover an author that you like
Hmm.
and then to find out that they wrote a ton of books? I'm like, oh, that's like
Yeah.
magic, because you know you're gonna like it, and it just goes on and on and on. It's like when you buy the really big bag of M&Ms.
Okay.
You know,
All of the colors.
all the
Okay. I
colors.
think one of the first series that we discovered together was when, as I recall, I think you were on bed rest with our first child. I think it was. You
No,
don't know the
I,
one
I
I was going to
yes,
say.
I do, and I know where we found it.
Okay. What did you think I was about to say?
You're about to say Dorothy Sayers.
No, I wasn't.
We were. What were
No,
you
I was
gonna
going to say
say?
Earl Stanley Gardner.
Now, okay, I think the first series we actually enjoyed together
Mhm.
was Harriet series.
Yeah, but I had practically memorized those in school, and I think I introduced you to them.
You did introduce me to him. Okay,
Okay,
so do you
so
know the
let's start
James
with
Harriet books?
James Harriet. If you,
Okay, the first one is All Creatures Great and Small,
mhm.
and it's the story of a vet in the Yorkshire Dales. Started mainly during the Depression.
During in 1930, I think was
They
when
are
it
a
started,
blast. They are
and
so good.
they are one of those kind of semi-autobiographical things. He fictionalized actual people, and some of the people, some people really did exist and recognized themselves in the books and thought it was great. But it just the whole culture of coming in as an outsider into the Yorkshire Dales back when it was still horse-drawn plows and horse-drawn wagons and lots of veterinary work out in the fields, literally. And he's got a really gentle sense of humor, and some of the stories they're just very
Oh,
good, very
some
good.
of them will bring you to tears. Some of them you will laugh out loud. They are a blast.
Mm.
Our kids love them so much that 3 of our adult sons were in Europe this year, and
Mhm.
they specifically traveled out to the Dales to see Scaledale House and
Mhm.
where he practiced because they just love it so much.
Yeah,
And these are some that you can hand your kids. There is some drinking.
there's and
But
there's a
when
couple there's a
when
couple
it
of
happens,
yeah,
they get really they end up in embarrassing situations, and
yeah.
so it's not at all tempting.
No. Okay, so James Herriot. The first one is called All Creatures Great and Small, and yes, that was the inspiration for the BBC series, which is also good.
Yeah, and it's appropriate for kids too.
Yeah,
And he wrote a ton of them. He wrote several,
yeah.
so
Okay.
good
Well, no,
fun.
that was yeah, James Herriot, very definitely. Now, I
Yeah,
was going to say when you were on bed rest, I was in the Air Force right then, and I went to the library on base to try to find something to read. And I think this is the first time I actually read a book by Earl Stanley Gardner.
yeah. I think that was the first time I had too. I love the old Perry Mason series
Yeah,
on
the old black and
TV.
white with Raymond
Yes,
Burr as the
yeah.
great attorney.
Well, the books are even better. It's kind of a popcorn read. They're easy, fast reads.
Well, Gardner was an attorney himself, and he
Yes,
started writing these legal stories because he said, "I want a book that a tired businessman can sit down and read in an evening." Now,
yes,
it still is a chunk. I mean, he's talking 200-page book, but
right.
they're meant to be entertaining, to move around, to be interesting books,
Yeah,
And if you like the old black and white TV series, it's very much like the books because Earl Stanley Gardner was a consultant for the series and actually appeared as a judge on some of the episodes. So, so he was very much involved with it. So any of the Earl Stanley Gardner stories
they're
featuring Perry
great. They're
Mason, we love
fantastic.
those.
And yet they have some questionable situations because generally nice people don't murder or get murdered.
That's true. That's true.
But
Mhm.
they're good. The good guy always wins.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, back to the one you started to say,
Dorothy
Dorothy
Sayers.
Sayers, which I think may be one of the, if not the best popular novelist in the English language.
Ever.
I mean,
Ever.
just
Every golden word. I mean, she's just great.
yeah.
Her characterizations are brilliant.
Hmm.
It's funny. They're well plotted, twisty plots,
Yeah, her
mysteries.
her character, her main character is the younger son of a nobleman. He's Lord Peter Wimsey. Lord Peter, being the younger son, doesn't inherit the title, so he's not the Duke of anything. And yet he has a little bit of his own fortune, and he's invested well, so he doesn't have to work
It's
really.
it's the gentleman detective genre.
He just is a curious sort and likes to figure things out, and so he becomes sort of a private detective.
They are the best written novels you can imagine. They're just written so perfectly. They're like a symphony.
And there's so many literary allusions in them
Oh, and they're
because
fun. They're just
because Lord
fun.
Peter is an Oxford, he's an Oxford graduate and
Yeah.
very well educated in the old classical tradition. So you'll see
You'll catch a
references.
lot of stuff.
You'll catch a lot of stuff. She wrote, I think, 9 novels, and then um, some of her uncompleted stuff was finished after her death, and
They're okay,
they're
but
not
they're
as
not
good as the
Dorothy
original.
Sayers.
But those first 9. Um,
Now Dorothy Sayers was part of what they call the golden age of detective fiction.
mhm,
And this is the time that really the big names and mysteries all wrote, and
mhm.
many of them knew each other.
Okay, so
And
like,
so um,
well,
Agatha
okay,
Christie,
Agatha Christie.
Dorothy Sayers,
Yes.
Nia Marsh.
Now she's interesting because Niall Marsh was a young woman from New Zealand who was living in London at the time, and she had read a couple of the Lord Peter stories. And she said one rainy afternoon on a weekend, she thought, I wonder if I could write a story like that. And so she said she ran across the street to a stationer and bought a lined pad and a new pencil and went home and kind of sketched out what kind of detective would I like to put in my stories. And so she invented a Scotland Yard inspector detective,
Inspector Allen. And there
Inspector
has
Allen.
been a couple of movies, a
Yeah.
television series made about him
And
too.
so she was definitely inspired by Dorothy Sayers. At the time, Dorothy Sayers was brand new and hot off the press. And her detective stories, she actually wrote, I think, 30 or 32,
Yeah.
a great number of stories. And again, there's two things I like about detective stories.
Okay.
That one of them is that they are all based, at least the ones that I like, they're based on the idea that there is justice in the world.
Yes.
There is real objective truth, and it can be found out, and justice can be achieved in this world. That's one thing that I like. The second thing I like is I like a story that has a character who is fundamentally decent.
Yes.
Okay, and that's the thing. I
And
don't
see,
like
that's
this
what I like about both Dorothy Sayers and Niall Marsh.
about Lord Peter and Inspector Allen.
Yeah, and something that some of Agatha Christie's I like, some of them I don't. I like Hercule Poirot.
Yeah,
I don't like some of hers because the heroes are not true
not
heroes.
very heroic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but Niall Marsh is awesome.
Hmm.
If you like the theater, uh, several of hers take place in theater life because she was a theater director.
That was
Yeah.
really her love.
Okay,
So,
now we've mentioned several of the Golden Age. We haven't
yes.
mentioned yet Rex Stout.
Rex Stout's an interesting one.
It also
Um,
is very fun and fast moving and also literary. And
and he's like now Marsh. He started writing in the like late 30s, early 40s when the first in the Great series started, and I think he was writing up until the late 60s at least.
yes,
So
and he wrote a ton of them.
his main character is a an eccentric guy by the name of Nero Wolfe.
Yeah, almost a hermit. He never leaves his house.
And I mean he's a nut, honestly, but he's a brilliant nut. And the stories are told by
His right hand
his
man,
right hand man
Archie Goodwin.
who's an all American kind of guy who does all the legwork for it. And Nero Wolfe sits back there and he reasons things out. And he says, you need to go talk to this person, or you need to
Yeah,
go, let's lay a trap for that person. And you kind of have to like Archie enough to get around Nero Wolfe, I think.
I love the Nero Wolfe
Okay.
novels. I love them.
Okay.
Okay,
So
so we all
mhm.
enjoy those. Now all those are from the golden age of
Those
detective
are kind of
fiction.
classic
And if you
detective
like
stories.
mysteries, you are doing yourself a disservice if you haven't read golden age authors because there are so many of them and they are brilliant. Now,
Let's talk
some
about some
moderns.
more
Let's talk about
moderns.
some moderns.
Okay. This is one that I think was made. I think Angela Lansbury was the character, wasn't she? Didn't they make some of the story? Okay. The
Oh,
story's Mrs. Polifax.
Mrs. Paulifax is so much fun.
Okay.
Mrs. Paulifax is an older widow who just gets so bored and distressed with her boring life that she begins to feel suicidal. So she
Mhm.
decides instead to join the CIA.
So she's
And sort of
volunteer. She's kind of
accidentally,
like,
they think she's a kook, but accidentally she gets mistaken for somebody else. She ends up working for them.
hmm
And it is just a hoot. It
and
is so much fun.
so she's like an older widow who's like the head of her garden
Like your
club.
librarian.
Your typical, but she also takes karate lessons. Okay,
Yes.
so she's an older lady who knows karate, and she goes all over into these bad countries as a tourist. Doing secret work for the CIA, and she just plays this whole innocent elderly tourist bit to the hill, and it's fascinating how you know it's fun stuff.
It is really
It's
fun.
fun.
That
No.
again, it's popcorn stuff, but it's really fun.
Now those are by Dorothy Gilman.
Dorothy Gilman, the
Okay.
Mrs. Paulifax
There's
series.
probably 15 of those at least, I'm
Yeah.
telling
You know
now.
what? We never told them how to spell Niall Marsh. They're never going to find it
Oh
by
gosh,
this.
yeah,
Okay. It's Ngaio Marsh. Okay.
yeah, it's spelled just like it sounds. Ngaio. It's a New Zealand name. Okay, it's a
Yes.
Maori name, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, you'll see it. And it looks Vietnamese actually to me. But at any rate, okay. Now
Let's talk
here's
about
what.
the Hillermans.
Now this is an interesting pair. This is actually
I stayed away from Tony Hillerman for a long time because the titles and stuff, it looks spooky. And I don't do horror or supernatural stuff at all. I'm not interested in that kind of
we
mystery.
don't like.
No.
Neither of us care for the occultic
No,
supernatural
not at all.
genres at all. And yeah, and I've seen them in the library, and they all had. I knew that they had something to do with the Navajo Nation, and all the covers looked really creepy.
Yeah.
And they look like this is a horror novel. And
But y'all,
they have like the first novel in the series, I think it's called The Skinwalker. I thought, whoa, too creepy. But
yeah,
you know what?
they're great.
I had a job one time when I was commuting like 2 hours on a project. And so I'm gathering armloads of audiobooks to listen to as I'm driving back and forth. And I finally, out of desperation and curiosity, I picked up one of the Tony Hillerman audiobooks. Well, it's not creepy at all.
No, they're
It's
not.
not at all. It's just that's the way the art looks. And he says something like in the first book, um, he talks a lot about the Navajo culture and the traditional Navajo religion, which does believe in witchcraft. and the main character is a detective by the name of Joe Leaphorn. He's a Navajo who was trained in the Belagana universities, the white nation in universities. But he says, I don't believe in skinwalkers. That's what they call the witches. I don't believe in skinwalkers, but I believe in people who do.
Now, see, that was brilliant because he said, yeah, I don't believe in this stuff, but people believing in it has an impact. And that's so true.
That's true of a lot of things. Yeah, because you can look at that and say that's false. It's not a real thing, except people who believe it act as if it is,
And
and that drives some of their motivations and their actions. And that's
so,
true of a lot of stuff, not
well,
just Navajo
that's
witches.
true.
Yeah.
He represented the Navajo Nation so well that they
Right.
made him an honorary member of the tribe.
He said that was
Yeah.
that was the greatest honor he received, and he got all the detective story honors. But he said
And
that one, being an honorary member of the Navajo Nation, was his proudest achievement.
well, I'll tell you, one of my proud achievements is when we were in the Navajo Nation
Yes,
last summer, we got to talk to some people there about Tony Hillerman, and that was really cool.
yes,
And
and
so,
the kind of characteristics in the way that they communicate and the way they think were borne out by what we saw when we met actual Navajo people, and interacted with them out on the reservation. I remember one time we had a flat tire. That's kind of like the story of our travels. We had a flat tire late one night in northern New Mexico, and I had to get out with the boys and change this tire on the side of a little two-lane highway out in the dark in the desert. And it felt like I had stepped into one of his novels.
it
I mean,
really does.
I just like,
He
I
just
am
he
in
makes
one
it
of his
come
stories
alive.
right now. So,
Now, Tony Hillerman died a few years ago.
2008, do you realize it was that long ago?
No, I didn't realize
Yeah,
that.
it is.
But
But
his daughter Anne started writing, and I was a little nervous about that because lots of times when people kind of take over a series, they ruin it. But she actually, I think I might like Anne's writing better than Tony's.
to be honest, you can see an arc from the first to the last of Tony Hillerman's novels as he developed his characters. But see, when his daughter Anne starts writing, and he told her, you need to pick these up and go after I'm gone.
Yeah.
Well, when Anne started writing, she already had fully fleshed out characters. She just had to send them forward.
Well, and she
And
took minor characters, like
yeah,
B-roll characters
yeah,
in the B-list characters in his novels and made them her main characters. It just worked out brilliantly. Now
yes.
we have to talk about one more before we
Mhm.
talk about things I like versus you like.
Okay.
Okay. Alexander McCall Smith. I don't like most of his stuff, but I love the number one ladies detective agency.
Now, this is an interesting man. Okay. Alexander McCall Smith is a Scottish surgeon, teaches at the medical university in Edinburgh, I think, until he retired. But he was raised in Botswana
Yes.
and whatever it was called before it had independence.
Yeah.
But anyway, he grew up in Botswana and loves the culture. And so,
Oh, he just handles it so gently and so respectfully.
so he wrote a series starting with a book called The Number One Ladies Detective Agency. It's about a woman named Precious Ramatswe, a Botswanan woman who inherits a herd of cattle from her father when he passes away. And she takes the money from the sale of that cattle and she starts a private detective agency because she picked up a book somewhere about principles of private detection and thought, there's nobody doing this in
I
Botswana.
can do this. Yes.
And the stories are they're grown-up themes. There are some things in there which
Yeah.
you might want to read first before you get into the children, but they're handled with the sense of there's right and there's wrong and there's things
Yeah.
you just don't do, and we need to correct things, and people are people, but we have to make sure that wrong things are put to right. And
Ma Ramatswe handles
yes,
things so well
yeah,
with so much grace and dignity. It's really awesome. Y'all
yeah,
read them.
and,
Now, we're going to talk in just a second about things Hal
mhm,
likes that I don't and things I like that he doesn't. But
mhm,
before that, lots of times people who read a lot have this idea that they want to write sometime.
yes,
We have something called the First Time Author Seminar,
mhm,
and it's available downloadable or in DVD.
mhm,
And it will walk you through how do you figure out what to write about, how do you get that book out of your head and into a manuscript,
mhm,
how do you get it edited, how do you get it published,
right.
and how do you get it into the hands of readers. And so if you are one of those people who would like to write the great American novel or the next
Mm.
great nonfiction book
Oh,
like we have,
maybe you are sitting around your house right now thinking, I have run out of projects. I cleaned the garage, all the closets are great, and I really want to write this book. hey, this may be your opportunity.
So go to raisingrealmen.com/author101.
Hmm.
And I think the first time author series would really help you.
Okay.
Now let's
So
talk about,
we're talking
okay,
about books that we're reading and things that we might recommend or suggest that you would consider during this time when you're spending a lot more time at home, or maybe you need a break from all the exciting news.
now Hal and I have, we like a lot of the same mysteries,
Hmm.
but we also have some very taste in books. Like I like action adventure, spy novels, military fiction. I love military fiction. I really love military science fiction. I'm kind
Hmm.
of an unusual girl. I guess the
Yeah,
Lord knew I was going to be the mother to 6 boys.
I thought you were well prepared for that. I have
I can
rejoiced over
ride,
it
I can shoot.
many times. Many times I've thought, yes, God was preparing you for this mission. Um,
Your
and
tastes are pretty different.
mine are quite different. I like history and I like biographies. So I read a fair amount of nonfiction.
So, what are your
Um,
favorite biographies that you've read, Hal?
wow. Well, let me back up a little bit why I read biographies. I started reading them actually when we lived in Louisiana. Um, there's so much Civil War history in that part of the country. I thought, let me read a couple of biographies and see if this is all just like people making things up. Well, I read a couple of biographies of men who were men of really strong character, men that are very respectable, and I noticed they kept coming back to mind as I went about my daily life. And I was thinking, how would he have handled this? And I thought, wait a minute, this is a positive thing. I
Yes.
really like the idea that the examples of men of heroism and nobility come back to mind when I'm challenged. You know what? I think this is a good thing. And so ever since that, I've tried to look up biographies of of
Of an
proven men
improving
of an
kind.
improving kind. Yeah. And some of them are contemporary biographies, some of them are modern
Okay,
biographies.
Hal,
So
I admire, but I do not emulate.
that's okay. I'm not saying that you have
I
to. I
read
just
for a different reason. The reason I read is I have horrible insomnia. And if I lay down in the bed, if I think, if what I have to do the next day crosses my mind, the sleep is over. And so I have to read something exciting enough
mhm.
that I forget what I have to do tomorrow.
I can understand that.
And so I
That
go
typically,
for adrenaline, which does not keep me awake. What keeps me awake is worrying about what I have to do tomorrow.
well, see, our sleep cycles are different because if I wake up late in the night and if I start thinking about it, I can't go back to sleep.
Uh,
So I have to, I can go to sleep
that's me in the
in the
early part of the night.
in the evening I can go right to sleep, but in the close to morning, I can't think about it. Any rate, so um, okay, some biographies I really like, or maybe some authors that I've really liked.
Yeah.
I really like David McCullough. He
Now I
came to
like
mind.
him too. He's
He
good.
wrote the biography John Adams,
He is
which
a good
the
author.
mini series was made based on his biography.
Well, he makes it live. He
Yeah,
makes it you feel
he's
like
very
you're living it.
and
Yeah.
that's there's several of the modern historian slash biographers are really good at telling the narrative. David McCullough, Stephen Ambrose, he's written a lot
Mhm.
more about the 20th century things. Although he wrote a very good book, um, Uncommon Valor, I think it was what it was called. But at any rate, it was a book about the Lewis and Clark expedition. Fantastic book. Okay, really good. I like Joseph J. Ellis.
Mhm.
He wrote one called His Excellency George Washington. One of the fantastic biography.
Now
So,
I read a good bit of that one when you had when it was in the bathroom.
oh,
That's how
okay.
Al and I read each other's books.
Wow. Yes.
We leave them in the bathroom.
Yeah. And and I have a little project I do sometimes. Every year I try to find a longer series to read. So like um Edmund Morris wrote a 3 volume biography of Theodore Roosevelt, and it's probably 4,000 pages. Okay. And very good. I really like it. Read all the footnotes. They're great. But that's one of those things I do. Like I read Winston Churchill's History of the English Speaking Peoples. It's 4 volumes. And it's kind of
Wow.
like how the Churchill family saved Western civilization.
Wow.
But it's good reading.
My attention span's not that long.
But
Now you also like PG Wodehouse. I cannot stand PG Wodehouse.
as another comedian said, now for something completely different. Yeah, PG Woodhouse. He wrote British comedy. Oddly enough, very clean. His stories are centered around a group of young men who are independently wealthy, so they've got a lot of idle time, and they're really pretty stupid. But there's a wise butler by the name of Jeeves, and Jeeves can rescue them out of all of their dumb things that they get themselves into. And so it's kind of the main plot is Bertie Wooster is, by his own admission, he is a goofball. He's a wealthy, well-meaning goofball, but he gets himself into really stupid binds.
Kind of a literary version of the Three Stooges, like
Yeah, but
more literate.
Yeah, but there's like a bunch of stooges, and then there's one guy who, the butler, Jeeves, who gets them out of the jam. And I like them. I find them entertaining. You do
I
not.
find them stupid.
You don't like absurdity.
I know.
You have
But
no
yeah,
tolerance
in
for
general,
absurdity.
I think guys like absurd humor and women can't stand it.
I tell you why.
Why?
I think because um, our part of the curse is that the fields are yielding thorns and thistles for us, and we're earning our bread by the sweat of our brow, and everything opposes us. All of creation falls in on us, and so the absurdity of our own lives is something that we see echoed in absurd humor, and we can laugh at it
All
because
right.
that way we don't cry about it. That's
Okay. All
my
right.
theory.
I don't know. I'm not gonna be much help for those of you who are looking for chick novels because I can't stand them. I like action, adventure, military fiction, spy novels, political thrillers. I love
Hmm.
Tom Clancy, everything Tom Clancy wrote, with the exception of one book that was complete garbage. His book, the backstory
Hmm.
of John Smith was horrible.
Clark.
John Clark, I
Clark.
mean.
Yeah.
The backstory of John Clark, that one was
Yeah.
horrible.
But all the rest of
All the
them,
rest of them were great.
yeah.
Um, I love, I don't, I read Cleve Cussler, but I love his Organ File series.
He wrote about what, 4 series, I
A
think.
bunch of series, a ton of them.
I know he wrote
And
several
some
series.
are better than others, but I love the Organ File series.
He just passed away a few months ago. I thought, yeah, and the whole paper industry went into mourning because he wrote like 4 or 5 big novels a
Man, I
year.
wish I could be as prolific an author as he is.
Wow.
We would have so many books if we could write like him. Yeah.
Yeah, you've only got one co-author. That's your problem. He's got a bunch of them. But
I loved science fiction when I was a teenager, but I went probably 25 years without reading any of it because so much of it was just complete garbage. A lot of science fiction, they chose that genre because they wanted to create a world without God.
They'd like a world with the rules that I write.
Right. And so a lot of it is just complete garbage. However, one of our sons introduced us to recently to several science fiction series that are not complete garbage. I have really, really enjoyed.
Well, now I shared one with you that actually, I enjoyed. Was that the John Ringo?
Yeah, the Troy Rising.
Yeah, the first book is called Live Free or Die.
Yes, it is so much fun. It's a near future science fiction. The idea being that alien race comes and they demand tribute from us, and we are saved by old fashioned capitalism. It's a blast.
Yeah, it's really Republicans in space. That's what it sounded like.
But it's really fun.
It was fun.
It has a lot of humor.
A lot of entrepreneurial
stuff. And we're entrepreneurs, so we love that. Some of your teens, your guys might read the Schlock Mercenary comics online. It's kind of a take off Schlock Mercenary.
Kind of like a pre-story.
Yeah, it's like a prequel to Schlock Mercenary.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Schlock, so I couldn't really comment.
But a lot of teens and college age guys read it.
Yeah,
20-somethings.
So
I love that.
So John Ringo is you've liked some of John Ringo's.
Well, not all of them, but I like the Troy Rising series.
And he collaborates with David Weber on some things.
Yes. Now they wrote the March to the Sea series, which I absolutely loved.
Okay.
And again, it's not perfect. There's
that's really
a little bit of sexuality.
Kind of a coming of age story, isn't it?
It really is. It's about a spoiled prince.
Yeah.
Who finds himself deserted with a whole company of soldiers responsible for taking care of him, but now he's got to take care of them in an alien hostile environment. And to see his growth as a character as he accepts that responsibility and grows into it.
Yeah.
And it's just pure adventure, so much adventure. It's really fun.
Okay.
And so, that's the March to the Sea series. Also, very near future science fiction, Lash Up by
Hmm.
Larry Bond is
Okay.
a blast. And it doesn't, I don't know that you could even really call it science fiction, but it's more military fiction. The
Hmm.
idea being that a foreign country
Hmm.
finds a way to shoot our GPS satellites out of the sky, which greatly downgrades our defense network.
Yeah.
And so this just a group of science aficionados
Hmm.
work together to create something to fight back. It's really fun.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, another series I'm enjoying right now, and again, this one is not something you can hand your kids. It's Lois Bujold McMaster's Vorkosigan series,
Okay.
and again, the characterizations are just brilliant. But the reason I say you can't hand it to your kids is I don't know. There's just a lot that is nuanced. That it's going to take a more mature mind.
Okay.
There's not that much that's immoral or questionable. It's pretty clean,
Hmm.
but just I don't know. I'd want it to be an older teen before you read that.
Okay.
But the idea is a young man who grows up in a noble family, a leader family, but he is damaged while he's in the womb due to a terrorist attack
Hmm.
in a society that hates mutants.
Okay.
And they think he's a mutant. He's not. It's terror.
Yeah.
He was harmed in the womb, not
Yeah.
genetically.
Okay.
But as he kind of fights his way to find his way in that society,
Hmm.
and lots of adventure, he ends up a mercenary admiral, and
Okay.
um, you come to know and really love all the characters in it until they feel like they're friends. She's just an excellent writer, and I love good writers.
Well, I remember a comment that uh, Isaac Asimov made. Somebody was asking him about science fiction. He's kind of a granddaddy of the science fiction era there, and he said to be good science fiction, it has to be good fiction
Yes,
first.
yeah,
And that's where a lot of things have gone astray, where they think, well, if we got good special effects, then we can have a weak plot as long as there's cool explosions, you know.
well, I all of those
Mm,
um the Honorverse series actually is written by a Methodist pastor, but
hmm.
even though it has some questionable things in it, but all of them have all of these science fiction are written from a basically Christian worldview. Not that they're Christian by any means,
No.
but the idea that there is right and there is wrong, and that you are held accountable for doing wrong,
Mm,
and that good is good and bad is bad.
yeah.
And that's very different from some of the cesspool science fiction that I read as a
Well, and,
teenager.
and that's true of some of the mystery novels, and we've
Yeah,
sampled a lot of things trying to find new series to dive
yeah.
into,
See, we always try to
and
find a new author to read every summer when we go to the lake. Y'all know about us going to the lake to write.
right,
We try to find a new author because
and
that's
and
our entertainment is
and
reading.
and we found some good one, and we found some that said, you know what,
Yeah, this
this
is
one is
too much
just too,
negative.
yeah, where there's too much ambiguity and situational ethics rather than objective morality involved, and that's, I don't want to fill my mind with that stuff,
So
so
David Weber's Honorverse series is
yes,
like Horatio Hornblower to the stars.
that's okay,
It
that's
is
a good.
very similar to Horatio Hornblower. Again, Horatio Hornblower, there were some questionable things in
C.S.
that.
Forrester.
C.S. Forrester,
And he
yeah.
wrote a number of books, not just not just the Hornblower series.
Yeah.
Hornblower was actually an inspiration for James Kirk
Yes.
too.
Yeah, for Star
Okay,
Trek, yeah.
but C.S. Forrester wrote, like, during the World War II era. He wrote a number of things about Horatio Hornblower's career during the Napoleonic Wars, and I've read several of those books and enjoy them. There's a few things I think, I don't care for that, but it's kind of historic,
Yeah.
from the culture of that time.
I
Um,
loved him.
I like some of his. I don't know if you've read some of his other books, like The Ship. I don't know if
I
you
didn't
read that.
like it.
You didn't like. I like
I
that one.
love the
I
Horatio
thought The Ship.
Hornblower series.
I
I
thought
didn't
The
like the
Ship was.
ship.
Have you read The Good Shepherd?
No, I don't think I've read that one.
That's an interesting one. It's written through the eyes of the son of a Lutheran pastor who is a reserve officer in the Navy. He's in command of a destroyer. He's been passed over for promotion, but because of the manpower crunch, he's been continued. And so he's really a dead end career. but he's doing his duty and he's doing his job, and it's all through his eyes as he's escorting a convoy across the sea and fighting for life, all the way through all of the U-boat attacks and such, and all the way through the quotations from scripture keep coming to his mind in the middle of stress, in the middle of
I need
pain
to
and
read
suffering.
that.
It's really good because it's very real of Christian life.
It sounds like the sequel to the Sky Pilot. Okay, the second Sky Pilot book.
I didn't read that one yet.
Okay, that one happens in World War One.
I know the one. Well, maybe we can talk about that another time. Get us some historical fiction.
Okay, but we have an audiobook of the Sky Pilot on our website. In fact, we have some of the books that have most influenced the people that our adult kids have become. These are the books that our kids recommended. You know what? You need to help those be more widespread. So you can check those out. We have a character building audiobook library that you can get them at a deep discount. In fact, you can download them all and have them right now to listen to with your kids. They're all family appropriate.
Oh, yes.
Listen to your kids while you're folding clothes or cleaning house or working on the garden.
And where can they find these?
They can go to raisingrealmen.com/shop, hit the audiobook tab, and you can see them there.
Okay. Now, we've thrown out a bunch of titles and a bunch of names. We're going to put that in our show notes.
Yes, and I'm going to tell you one more thing. Because our audiobooks are all on sale right now.
Oh, good.
And so if you go to raisingrealmen.com/homepack, HOMEPACK, then you can join our email community there and get a bunch of free downloads and also get up to 50% off our downloadable audiobooks. So and they get a $10 off Craftsman Crate too. So it's our here's some help when you're stuck at home. Get freebies. So go to raisingrealmen.com/homepack, HOMEPACK. We better go, Hal. We're way over time.
We're over time, but we hope you've got some good ideas. We'll put these titles and names in our show notes. So check those out at halandmelanie.com/radio.
Yes.
And I'll also put the link, if you're watching on YouTube, I'll put the link in the notes on YouTube as well. So until the next time, we thank you for joining us. And I'm Hal.
And I'm Melanie.
We'll talk to you later, okay?
You've been listening to Making Biblical Family Life Practical with Hal and Melanie Young. If you found this program interesting, challenging, and encouraging, why not join us on the web at halandmelanie.com. That's HALANDMELANIE.com. Or follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook at Facebook/HalAndMelanie or Facebook.com/RaisingRealMen. This program is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network. Join us next week when we'll be back to talk about making biblical family life practical. Until then, thank you and God bless you for listening.